You've saved for decades, but one wrong move now could cost you hundreds of thousands in taxes. What's the best order to pool your money in retirement? What's the best distribution strategy? And really, why does it matter so much? Let's break down the strategy that can make your money last years longer. But when you retire, consider this, your paycheck disappears. That's when the real question kicks in. Where do you pull income from first? Most people default to withdrawing from their taxable accounts first, but that strategy, it could quietly sabotage your entire retirement because how much you withdraw funds can matter more than how much you save. Seriously, it affects your taxes, your Medicare premiums, your legacy planning, and whether you are going to outlive your money or not. What we're talking about today is I'm retired. Where am I going to get my supplemental income? I think the most important thing is that you got to understand when you're approaching retirement is where are you going to get your income from, right? First of all, you have things like your fixed income or defined income. Those are things like Social Security, rental income, pension, annuities, dividends, things that are predictable, reliable, and hopefully not all tied to the stock market. And then you're going to have your desired income. These are going to cover your expenses, things that you want to do, travel, what are your hobbies. And then what you need to find is your income gap. The income gap is the difference between your wanted and desired income and then your fixed income as far as where it's coming from with Social Security, pension, annuities, and those other things. So let's say you have desired income of $120,000, but all of your fixed income makes up about, $80,000. So you have a 40 income gap. So typically what most retirees will do is pull that money from their investments. And the question is, where do I pull that money from first? I've seen people pull it from their savings first or their after-tax accounts, their individual accounts or their trust accounts, or where most people have their wealth is in their IRAs or 401ks. There's pros and cons to each. What are your goals and your objectives? Do you want to pay less taxes over your lifetime? Well, you got to pull out the money in the correct order. Or do you want to leave more of a legacy to your beneficiaries and make sure that legacy transfer is tax efficient? Well, we may have to pull from other accounts first. There is no one size fits all. And if you have multiple accounts, traditional IRAs, 401ks, after-tax accounts, whether that's in your name, joint name, you and your spouse, or in a trust account, but then you have Roth money, there's so many different ways that you can do this. So in today's video, what we're going to compare are two different ways to do this, and then what we look at as potential pros and cons to each. And of course, you have to have a strategy that's customized to you. But what you also have to understand is that all of these accounts are taxed differently. Like your IRAs generally can be looked at as your most expensive accounts when it comes to taxes, because those are taxed at your ordinary income. And most people that we meet with at BAM Advisory Group have most of their wealth in IRAs and 401ks. Now, your after-tax accounts that are in your name, in the name of you and your spouse, maybe it's joint tenants with rights of survivorship, or maybe it's an individual in your name, TOD, transfer on death, or it's in a trust name. Those are taxed at if you hold the holdings long-term capital gain. So if you put in $100,000 into that account, and then whatever it's grown to, let's say it's grown to $500,000 by the time you retire, you're only taxed on the growth. That $400,000 is taxed at long-term capital gains, assuming you've held that money for at least 12 months. Long-term capital gains has a different tax bracket, 0, 15, and 20. Some circumstances, you can almost pull out Social Security income and after-tax distributions and be at a very low to no tax bracket in certain examples. And then, of course, your Roth money is tax-free. Again, as long as that money in the Roth has been there at least 5 years, you're not taxed on the growth. So again, this video is about is what's the best order to take the money. And again, it's not a one-size-fit-all. BAM Advisory Group, and I think most good financial advisors will customize it to you. But there's going to be times where pulling out money from the IRA makes more sense early than the non-qualified, or maybe it's the non-qualified over the IRA, or maybe you blend a couple both. I think generally the Roth IRAs are left in longer because sometimes the philosophy is, why would I touch the Roth money? Because I'm giving up that tax-free compounding growth and let me spend my other money. But again, it all depends on, do you want to minimize your taxes over your lifetime, or do you want to minimize the taxes when you pass this money to your heirs? So there's no one size fits all. So again, let's get into it. This is again a hypothetical client example, John and Jane Sample. You can see they've got about $2 million in investment accounts. They've got some money in traditional IRAs, some money in Roth, and then they have an after-tax account and a little bit of money in savings. For rates of return, we're using about a 5% rate of return in the investments. These two are both retired. They're age 65. They retired last year, and we have them both living till age 90. 90. Really, their financial priorities are retirement planning, investment management, minimize taxes, and running out of money, providing legacy. So you can see here, a good financial advisor's planning philosophy should be dynamic, because if you're watching this, your life is going to change, your needs are going to change, your goals are going to change, probably multiple times. So if you have additional or different needs, we can always customize those and change your plan on the fly. They want about $120,000 in today's term, right? And out of that $120,000 in retirement, they've got about $90,000 in fixed income, which means Social Security and a pension. So again, they've got about a $30,000 income gap. Now what we're going to talk about is their lifetime taxes. In this example, what we call their base facts, the order of distribution is IRA, non-qualified, then Roth. And you can see their estimated lifetime taxes are about $843,000. The question you may have is, hey, David, why would I spend my IRA money first? And I'll give you some examples on why you do that. In certain circumstances, spending your IRA money first, your pre-tax money, your 401k money first, essentially what that does is organically reduces your future RMD. You got a lot of money. If most of your wealth is in pre-tax investments, IRAs, and 401ks, and you've got a long time before you have to take your RMDs, maybe you're 65 and your RMDs are at 73, or maybe you're at 65 and your RMDs are at 75, you've got 10 more years. So if you're not going to touch that money for a while, then you can look down the road and your RMDs could be pretty large. The second piece of this, which a lot of people don't consider, is what's called the widow's tax. Now, your spouse is the only individual that can inherit your IRAs, put them in their name, and not deal with any tax implications. But I've seen this happen a lot over the last few years, is that, you've got your clients, you've set up their income, their distribution for them based upon their goals. You're doing things like Roth conversions or QCDs. You're donating money because you want to reduce. You're doing gifting, ILETs, whatever it is to reduce taxes, but you didn't get enough time to do that, and the spouse dies prematurely. Yes, the surviving spouse can inherit their IRAs and pre-tax money without any problems. The problem is if they're having the force to take their RMDs, now they go from a married filed jointly tax bracket to a single tax bracket, and now those RMDs can push them into the highest tax bracket that they've ever seen, and then they're stuck. In this example, $843,000 of lifetime taxes. Again, this is their base facts, and this is where their withdrawal strategies: IRA, non-qualified, and then Roth. Well, what if we changed the order of distributions, and let's just kind of see what's going on. Now, in this example, what we said is we've just changed their order of distributions. So now what we said, for all of their supplemental withdrawals, let's do non-qualified first, then their pre-tax money, their IRAs, 401ks, and then their Roth. And you can see what this did is has the potential to save them over $282,000 in lifetime taxes. I mean, that's really good, right? That's a lot of money. But what I also like is it has the potential to increase their portfolio by almost $658,000. That's what we call tax alpha. In this example, if they want to say, hey, my goals are twofold. I want to see if I could potentially reduce my lifetime taxes. This does that. But I also want to create more tax alpha in my portfolio, leave more wealth tax efficiently. This strategy does that both. Just changing your withdrawal strategy makes a huge difference. Okay, so let's get a little bit more granular now to show you side by side where these two strategies, what it kind of means to a potential client. So again, we have the base facts, which is on this side. That withdrawal strategy again is IRAs first, then non-qualified, then Roth. And then we have, well, let's do the alternate strategy where we do non-qualified first, traditional IRAs and Roth. So you can see, we're going to look at the numbers here in a second, but we're going to look at these bars. The orange bars are all your tax-free assets. The base facts, you can see that the tax-free assets are growing and we potentially leave more behind. Your tax-deferred assets are in the light blue, and you can see over their lifetime, we actually get rid of those organically through distributions. And your taxable assets, you can see here, don't get depleted. And what's really unique about taxable assets, if we're talking about legacy play, the two assets that you can leave under current law tax-free are your Roths, but then your taxable assets under current law get what's called a step-up basis. Step-up basis is that if you have $1 million in Apple that grows to $2 million and you pass away, your kids get to inherit that $2 million, and that's their new cost basis. They're not paying tax on any of the growth. Again, the base facts, the withdrawal strategies, traditional IRA, then non-qualified, and then Roth. So you can see the tax-free assets, about $3.1 million end of life. That is the same with the alternative withdrawal strategy. So really no change there. You're leaving $3.1 million tax-free. Again, your kids under this situation could still leave the money and let it grow for 10 years. That's always a value add. Now, what I like in the base fact scenario, is that you're not leaving any tax-deferred assets, pre-tax assets. You're actually spending it all. We like to say at BAM Advisory Group, don't let your money die with you. So leaving tax-deferred or pre-tax assets to your kids creates a tax problem because they have to take that money over 10 years. And who knows what their income situation is going to be. They might have their own RMDs, their own, tax assets that are causing taxes. Now they inherit mom and dad's money, and that could just, move them into a higher tax bracket. So in this situation, I like this a lot better because you're not leaving tax deferred assets, and then your taxable assets, because again, the withdrawal strategy was tax deferred first, then taxable. You can see you're leaving here potentially $1 million, and your kids get a step up in cost basis. So let's break this down. Their alternative liquidation strategy works good for you because you pay less in taxes, almost $282,000, and you're leaving more money behind to your kids. The problem is that this $1.3 million that gets left to your kids, the question is how much of that money gets lost in taxes? Your kids have to withdraw it over 10 years. Where here, they don't, the base fact strategy, you're not leaving tax deferred assets, you're leaving tax-free assets and a step up in cost basis. So what I like is for legacy planning, to me, spending down your IRAs first generally works better for legacy planning for your kids, and spending your non-qualified assets first is generally better for you and the taxes you pay over your lifetime. So again, the question is, what are your goals? What are your objectives? What do you want to do with your money? And again, in the order to withdraw money should be based upon your goals. Is it, hey, I want to pay less in taxes over my lifetime. I don't care what my kids have to deal with. Or, David, I'm going to have all this money. Why would I want my kids to be taxed at higher tax brackets and just us give a bunch of money to the IRS for no reason? Legacy planning is more important too. Then I think we have to look at alternative withdrawal strategies. If you're curious about how we help people protect what matters most in their retirement, and you just want to see how our process works for you, give us a call or visit our website at bamadvisorygroup.com. You can schedule a 15-minute, no cost, no obligation, no pressure phone call with one of our advisors to get all of your questions answered, to understand your options, and for us to be able to provide you with more information and clarity. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you all real soon.